So sorry. Tell us more about this list of sexy MPs, because I'm fascinated now. I'm going to try and find it.
Oh God, I'm accidentally on the Daily Mail. No.
Oh no.
I'm sorry. I've increased its popularity or whatever. It's probably going to be higher on the list of popular websites now. Yeah. So
it's all your fault now.
yeah. So, and of course they've split it into sexiest male versus. Well, not versus sexiest female, but the sexiest male, sexiest female, then least sexiest, sexy male, then least sexy female.
Who are the two sexiest then?
So the two sexiest, sexiest male politician goes to Rishi Sunak. Although I did see another article where he's gone down in the league.
He always reminds me of sort of like a rejected early draft of an Aardman sidekick.
Yeah, he just reminds me of Wallace.
Hi, this is Simon in Post. Obviously, what we were talking about here was not so much making fun of people, but of making fun of the fact that the list itself exists. We are a anti-bullying podcast, but one of the things we want to point out is the stupidity and silliness of such lists. Anyway, back to the fun and games.
And then,
yes.
Sexiest female is Lisa Nandy. I mean, she's not unattractive, but she's, I don't know, would I go as far to say she's the sexiest female? I don't know.
Keir Starmer is second.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Unbelievably, Michael Gove is the least sexy male politician.
Michael Gove? Really?
Yeah. Gosh, who would have thought that?
I know. But, I mean, yes.
Theresa May.
I mean, Michael Gove must just be Boris Johnson's emotional support turbot at this point.
Just the least sexy female politician.
Except amongst Tory MPs who probably think of her as, like, matron.
Just who is going around making these lists? One, they think that people. I'd say,
who gets employed to make lists about the sexiest MPs?
I suppose it's the Daily Mail, so I don't need to ask the question of going out into the world to make the world a worse place. But
yeah, where did they get this from? I want to know where their source is.
There's percentages, so it suggests that there was a poll.
Oh, here we are.
God.
The list was compiled by adultery site Illicit Encounters.
Illicit Encounters with MPs. Oh. We're going to have a diplomatic protection group after us any moment now, because who was in which toilets in St James's Park?
Yeah, who asked 2,000 of their users which MPs they would most like to have an affair with. Oh, that's slightly different than sexiest politician, isn't it?
Yes, because you have an affair with the person you're most likely to be able to blackmail. Oh God, what's now?
Look at this. No, just the quote. Like, number one sexiest politician goes to Labour's Lisa Nandy. The quote. Who said this? Oh, someone who works for the website. She is genuine, kind, and sports a girl next door look, which men find extremely appealing.
You mean predators?
Yeah.
So I've fallen down a rabbit hole now. So I've found a Vice article that's from 2018, which has got a very different list of things. But their source is literally the website sexymp.com, so .co.uk. As seen on An Anatomy of Scandal on Netflix in 2022, this website's been going since 2011 and is the most popular banned website in the Palace of Westminster, apparently.
Oh no, I've now found this web. I feel like Kim, I've just Googled it and I found the web. Oh my.
Yeah. It's coming back in May 2022, apparently, but it's June now, so but you can pop your email address in and they'll let you know when it's back up and running. But they in 2018, the sexiest male politician was Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
The honey monster himself.
And then Laura Pidcock was the sexiest female. I'm just having a quick.
Yeah, I can't remember. I recognise the name.
Oh, okay. Got a sort of play a TV doctor kind of look. I'll be honest, she does actually look a bit like my GP.
I have nothing to say here because my MP is Dominic Raab, who Yeah.
I discovered while we're on the random elite good-looking people conversation, I was because I haven't seen any of the Jubilee stuff because we've been away, so I was just watching highlights. Happened to notice one person quite attractive going into the processions. I was like, quick Google, and discovered Sam Chatto, who is the Queen's cousin's grandson.
Okay.
Who is the Queen's great nephew. He does pottery and art and stuff. He has an Instagram. He makes quite nice ceramics and things, and is just adorable.
Oh, he is quite pretty. Oh, so the real question is, does he sell any of his pottery?
He does indeed. He's got he's got a website coming up. He does like pop up shops and stuff. So I'm assuming, and there are prices in the pictures under the stuff. So I'm assuming yes, but I can't see how much he charges. But he's got like a little workshop and things called Make.
Mm.
But there you go.
Are his pots better than the knitting patterns?
Well, I mean, I don't have to buy the clay and make the pot itself, so I'm going to go with yes. Any famous person who makes stuff. Oh, it's a very nice teapot.
There should be a collab in which, like, you can knit a little teapot cozy for.
Oh, this amazing.
I mean, I think we need to get in on the merching options here. Is get Tom to design a nice teapot cozy, and then get this new chap to make a teapot, and then you can combine the two into one £700 teapot and cozy.
Yeah.
Do you get a video of them making it for you? I don't know how this works.
I don't know. I think that's a different part of the internet.
Do not Google naked pot making.
Well, you knew what I was Googling earlier.
Do you need a second just to...
What were we going to talk about today?
Well, I have things. So, cue the music. Hello and welcome to Atypical, the podcast. It's the podcast you're listening to right now. It's where we discuss and explore life from a more atypical perspective. My name's Simon, he there, your host, and I'm joined today by returning champion Kim.
Hello.
And the Dowager Duchess of Atherstone, Joey.
Hi.
I felt like
I mean, I'm not sure that's how other people identify me, but I'll go with it.
I'm sorry. Maybe I should have. Sorry, Kim. Should we have called you Professor? I mean.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, if we're embellishing everything, why not?
So, I'm joined today by Dr. Kim and the Duchess of Atherstone, Joey.
I mean, but she does actually have a PhD, and I am not an aristocrat, so not yet. Anyway, let's see. Let's see how good I can stalk Sam, and then we'll find out.
Well, you just need to get into pottery, and then you're fine.
Yeah.
That's not going to make any sense if I don't include the cold opening.
It's fine. Editing is a marvellous thing.
The power of editing, indeed. So, there's been a few things in the news over the last couple of weeks. Obviously, we've had the Queen's Jubilee has sort of blotted out everything else. But something I spotted the other day, which I think a few people noticed, was a chap an autistic chap called Ian, who took his cat into Sainsbury's with him. Now, the cat is an emotional support animal for him. He's taken it into multiple other shops in the past. It's never been a problem. I did actually rather like the way the BBC reported this. I don't know if you saw the headline, but it said, autistic man with autism takes cat. It was just like, well, I'm glad they cleared that up.
Opposed to autistic man without autism.
Well, yes, I just assumed maybe the cat was called Autism. But yes, no, so he's actually taking Sainsbury's to court, or at least he said he's going to, because he apparently was left upset and trembling and so forth. And it sort of got me thinking actually a little bit about sort of non-standard assistance animals. And I suppose then into kind of just how we as humans connect with animals, but specifically how, those of us who are perhaps slightly more atypical might do so. I mean, I was reading some research which suggested that I mean, again, this was mostly focused on children, and obviously adults, very different, but there was quite a lot of research that suggests a connection between having a companion animal and reducing loneliness and even providing an improved feeling, because of course the fundamentally non-judgmental nature of pets can actually facilitate new social connections, again in children with an autism spectrum disorder, because it helps to reduce barriers in initiating new conversations and social interactions. I mean, we've all been out for a walk, right? If you see someone coming with a dog, you can have a conversation with a person who's got a dog. It's like an icebreaker, isn't it?
Very much, very much so. I generally don't talk to the person, though. Just talk to the dog. Hi. Oh, there's a person here too. Gosh, hello.
Yeah, I realised the other day, like about, I don't know, several hours after meeting someone, that I'd had a nice little friendly chat with them. And then I went, oh, what's your dog's name? And then a few hours later, I was like, oh, I didn't even ask what their name was. I just asked what their dog's name was and then wandered off. And I thought that's actually probably quite rude.
I think people are used. I mean, number of dog walkers that I know, and I don't know their names, but I know the dogs. It's like, it's so and so's mum. Oh, okay, yes, I know.
Oh, yes.
Sorry,
go ahead.
In terms of the Sainsbury's thing, like when it's a service animal, so like a guide dog, for instance, it's very obvious that it's a guide dog, because they're obviously trained, they behave in a certain way, they've usually got some sort of harness or jersey on. And if someone was pretending to have a service animal, you would be able to work it out quite quickly, because it wouldn't be acting in the correct way. Just seeing it from a business point of view, if someone's got a service peacock, because this man had a cat, but I've seen people with service peacocks. I've seen people with service everything that is just sort of as a comfort animal, as opposed to actually being. It's one of those things you can't enforce it in a small way. You can't be like, oh, it's just for people who have comfort animals, we'll let them in, because it's going to get to the point where it's just everyone's bringing their dog into Sainsbury's, which obviously you can't do from a hygiene point of view with food. So I understand their blanket refusing entry as much as I would very much like people to be comforted by their animals in situations. But it's one of those situations where you wouldn't be able to control it if you said yes, because I think, unfortunately, we live in a world where people tend to take the piss.
Yes, I think in this particular case, it was a case of he had taken them into other stores before and had even asked Sainsbury's, I think via Twitter, for permission to go in there. And it sounds a bit like it was a security guard perhaps took sort of the wrong end of the stick on that and forced him out. But I think your point is valid, certainly. There was some research done, something I was involved in a little while ago, actually, was on guide ponies on buses. Let's just say it was quite a lot of difficulty to do, because getting the things on and off the buses turned out to actually be quite difficult. But I mean, I was quite interested.
Shetland ponies, or are we talking like full-sized ponies?
Little Sebastian.
Okay. I mean, even still, that's not a small animal, but yeah.
Well, it's when people take emotional support pigs on aeroplanes, I start thinking it's potentially quite a difficult one. But I mean, it's sort of like the connection we have with animals is absolutely fascinating, I thought. I wondered if perhaps there was a greater thing about sort of animals being, I'm trying to think of the right term, like an emotional bridge for people who might perhaps struggle more with social or human connections, and actually help to teach people to be able to socialise with each other.
Yeah, I think so. Because I think, when you're trying to chat to someone that you don't know, there's only like a limited kind of arsenal of things that you can ask someone, right? And most of the time it's very like boring, awkward small talk that, I don't know, generally a lot of like atypical people don't really get on well with. Whereas, I don't know, like animals are just, I don't know, they just are very clear about what they want and how they are. And they're just, generally, well, I was going to say generally that's like quite lovable, but I mean, cats, I suppose, are a bit more like potentially not. But they can be, you just kind of know what you're getting with animals, I feel. And that makes it easier then to chat to someone else, because you can chat to them about their animal.
I think as well, obviously, animals are incapable of judging you. Although I have had some looks from cats sometimes where I've thought, but it's consistent. You know, if you've got any form of syndrome where social interaction is either difficult or causes you a great amount of anxiety, if you interact with an animal that interacts back with you in the same way every single time, you don't have that initial anxiety because you know what you're getting. I wonder if every time someone with very severe autism that prevents them communicating brilliantly, if they spoke to the same person and they always responded in the same way, I wonder if that would be as easy as it is for when you see obviously people with support animals. Is it that fact that it's that consistent, unjudgmental, just or not robotic, but I think it's just it's there's no fear of not knowing what's about to happen, I suppose, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think
It's sort
with
of predictable.
and
Less likely to be rejected, except possibly by cats.
yeah.
We've just lost most of our listenership.
I mean, I love cats, but like because I feel like I resonate with them and they're kind of similar to me. But yeah, they are a bit more kind of like, you know, very independent, and they kind of need their space, and they don't want you to like, you know, necessarily interact with them all the time, which, you know, I resonate with.
So
God, you've just described me there. I don't like people.
Yeah.
The article you sent earlier, Simon, said essentially they thought it was a non-judgmental thing, but also it was sort of docile animals, but it wasn't limited. It was like they'd used guinea pigs as well as dogs. So I think anyway.
Yes, domesticatable.
Yes, domesticatable. Oh, that is not easy to say when your throat's really sore.
Capable of being domesticated.
There you go. If you had any such animal, then in theory it would be good for that. I know I've and this isn't a good example of an animal good for it, but horses, when there's a lot of places, pony and thing centres that do riding for people with autism, especially if they're non-verbal on their spectrum, and they found that sort of work, especially if it was they were trying to work out what if it was something to do with the horse, so it was actually the physical activity of riding, and a lot of it came with the idea of having to balance. And because when you're having to balance, it's a full body activity, and it's about jump starting connections in different places. And they found that a lot of people who had very severe communication issues, when they'd started riding, the people around them had noticed a very noticeable change in their behaviour and their ability to deal with the people around them. It just means I think that everybody should just go skiing.
with my back, no, thank you.
Just get everyone a wobble board. It'll make everyone happy.
Everyone a wobble. Yeah, can I stand on it while I do meetings?
Yeah, no one's sad when they've got a wobble board. Very much like a golden retriever in that manner.
Well, what you say about that, I have just found a study by the University of Missouri looking at the impact of shelter cat adoptions for families with, again, children with autism. Lots of this research is focused on children. I do try and find stuff that's focused on adults, but funding. But the university actually found that children with autism exhibited increased social skills after the cat had been introduced to the household, and that potentially the quieter, calmer demeanour made them a relatively suitable pet. And they went on to hypothesize, again, like you mentioned, guinea pigs could be quite a useful one because, again, quite docile and quieter and don't mind sort of being stroked and can put up with certain levels of touch. And a lot of the sort of the outcomes, looking at it a year or two later, was that the children had maintained their ability to be a bit more social with others because of it. So that feels like a positive outcome to me.
Definitely.
Anyway, so that's Ian from Clapham, who is suing Sainsbury's because of his cat. Now then, talking of actually organisations understanding things about autism, because obviously that guard didn't. I have spotted that a new airline, JetBlue, they're currently expanding, and they've decided that they want to put a premium on better serving all travellers. So they have decided to work with another company called Breeze Airways in the US, and they want to become a certified autism inclusive carrier. So what they're going to do is they're going to actually train all their frontline staff to, quoting them here, deliver a safe and happy travel experience to individuals with autism. So this is going to be specifically around probably flight attendants who'll be taught to identify and alleviate stresses associated with air travel. And I think even people who don't have autism can find air travel stressful and difficult. So if this helps some, it'll help all, won't it?
definitely.
I mean, I've been traveling by plane my entire life. I've taken more aircraft, I suspect, than the both of you put together, and I still get a little bit edgy when I travel. I mean, Joey will remember when we went to Ireland. It's like I need a glass of something just to calm me down.
Yes.
Yes. But I think it's potentially. I think for travel, I mean, we'll have to get the mysterious voice back on as our roving reporter. There are definitely things which can be done better. I think for all of us for when it comes to traveling. I mean, you're up in the Lake Districts at the moment, aren't you, Kim? I mean, how are you finding it up there with sort of getting around and buses and things like that, I presume?
Yeah, I mean, luckily I'm able to kind of just hop on and tag on to people that have cars. But I did get the bus today, so I went to, there's a bus that comes every 2 hours. So
Yeah, don't miss it then.
I know. So I kind of got there, went to like Penrith, and I was like, cool, when's the next bus back? 2 hours. Okay, I've got 2 hours here. So I was like, I'm going to have to make sure I get that bus. Otherwise, I'm going to be here for 4 hours. So, yes, it's a bit different to London, a little bit different.
Yes.
Yeah,
fresher air.
Fresher air, though. Yes, exactly, and very relaxing to look out the window of the bus as you're on the way and on the way back. Like, I definitely don't think, when it's an hour bus journey or whatever, it's not as bad when you can just see mountains and lakes. So much nicer than like looking out the window in London. Well, actually, looking out the window in London can be quite nice. It's just very different.
Yeah.
I quite like getting the bus in London. It's just, you can sit down and you can just chill out and not, you only have to get off or get up or move whenever it's your stop. So I am pro bus.
we are a pro bus podcast. We're also pro train and various other pro things. We won't talk about what we're anti. I got an angry message from someone because apparently we're anti children, but we just don't like them. It's fine.
Anti children,
anti football,
anti children. We're not suggesting we sterilise people. We just don't want them ourselves.
Yes, exactly. They should be neither seen nor heard until they're 18.
Did you genuinely get a message from someone about being anti-children?
Yes, but it's fine. They were joking.
Oh, okay.
I hope.
Oh, okay. That's.
I got a lovely message from someone's parents telling me how good the podcast was. So we'll go with that as being like the other side of it.
Was that my parent?
Maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Oh dear. I had something to say about JetBlue. I've just read their page. I forgot what it was now. I can't remember what it was now. I've been distracted by my father messaging you.
See, this is rather wonderful. So I do love a little bit of borderline ADHD distraction. It's rather fun, isn't it? It was a bit like on Saturday. We went away camping at the weekend with some friends. I say some friends, 500 of them. And I went back to the tents to go and get something with another friend, and both got completely distracted and forgot what we were there for. We went back, oh yeah, there was the thing we needed, wasn't there? It's just backwards and forwards about 3 times, and it's the length of a rugby pitch, and it's getting my steps in for the day.
I did that quite a few times as well. I went to get my car keys, went back to the car and went, oh God, they're still in the tent. I had to walk 2 rugby pitches back across. Yep. Good fun. No, so JetBlue,
yes.
They've got a range of so they've a whole thing of not just autism but intellectual development and cognitive disabilities. And they gave example of things for autism, dementia, Alzheimer's, Down syndrome as just examples of services that they're already able to help with. Made it very clear that obviously safety must come first and you have to be compliant with wearing a seatbelt and that sort of thing, but that they are aware, obviously, there's certain things that people struggle with, but also very much making it very clear right from the get-go, if you need some sort of assistance, make sure you ask for it and they'll do it.
Well, that's brilliant.
Which is, it's just awareness, because I went to a concert the other day and there was a young lady with very clearly some form of muscular neural issue where she couldn't quite control her limbs brilliantly. She wasn't like waving around, punching or falling over, but you could see she wasn't steady on her feet. But she was at a concert and she wanted to dance and she wanted to enjoy herself. Boyfriend was looking after her very, very well. But there was a point where I think sensory overload had happened and she had enough and it was hurting her ears. And they sort of left and her favourite song came on. So she ran back as fast as she could and was just having a little boogie to it. And then she was going to leave again. But the security guard couldn't cope with it. And it very much came across that the security guard thought she was drunk when she hadn't had a single drink the entire time I was there. And that was good 3 hours. And I was just watching her enjoying the thing and smiling. It was genuinely a joy to watch her watching the concert because she was having such a good time. But then just a lack of awareness that she's having a bit of a moment, let her enjoy herself and then move her along gently. And where she was standing wasn't great, so I understand why he needed to move her. But it was that sort of very aggressive, you've got to get out of here sort of mentality. But then later on, what annoyed me is later on, a group of 20 people had started leaving and they did an encore, so that they ran back and stood exactly where they were, but there was 20 of them completely blocking the exit, whereas this one girl by herself was not doing any such thing. And that security guard just stood there and he's just like, what? How is this a fair representation of what's safe? Like,
Absolutely.
And it was that sort of thing. I did see him confront someone coming out of a disabled toilet as well, and very much why are you using the disabled toilet? I was like, oh my god.
Oh, yes, Marianne and I discussed a similar one recently, actually.
It's like, you can't do that. It's like, you have no idea. Went in with her daughter into the disabled toilet, and it's like, yeah,
it's invisible disabilities, and what right do you have to decide which toilets I can use anyway? So
yeah. Especially when there wasn't a queue of people in wheelchairs either. So it wasn't even a case of there's very clearly someone here who needed it more than you. There was no one there, and he decided this was the hill he wanted to die on. Apparently,
well, there's no help with some people.
Anyway, nice that JetBlue.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's good they're doing that kind of thing. I mean, can either of you think of any other training other organisations are doing about just in general more acceptance of stuff?
I mean, we're doing some poverty training at the moment.
Oh, tell us about the poverty training.
So that was a weird one in terms of, because that was very much an email. Do you want to go on this training? And I was like, sure, why not? I thought it'd be useful for the charity work I do as well. Anyway, because I am an equality, diversity, and inclusion officer for a charity. So, well, actually, this would be very useful. But this was for my work with gyms and things. I had no idea what to expect because I wasn't told anything about it besides it was poverty training. And it was horrifying in the sense that you obviously already know the statistics about poverty, and you have a weird Dickensian idea of it. When I think of poverty in this country, I immediately think Artful Dodger from Oliver Twist. I've a ridiculous idea of a scrubby child. So if a child isn't covered in soot and grubby in the street, not a child's perfectly fine. But they did a lot of work on trying to break down that stereotype, trying to give you an idea of numbers. And it was 1 in 3 children at the moment is probably on the poverty line, if not below it, which was a terrifying number. The number did go higher for people in the LGBTQ plus bracket, but it was a lot about how you could poverty proof a business.
What does that mean?
Service. So it's about obviously you're a business. You have to make money.
That's the general idea.
General idea of a business. So you can't offer things for free because that's not possible. But there are ways of making sure that if someone on a lower income comes into your business, they're not made to feel rubbish. So it was silly little things like if you've got a vending machine and the price on it is really, really small, that person has to walk over to the vending machine, read the price, and then decide they can't afford it and walk off. And that's so embarrassing that people actually won't even bother walking up to the vending machine because they're too afraid they won't be able to afford something. Whereas if the price of the cans is the same and it's quite big font on the machine, so someone doesn't actually have to walk up to it to read it, they can decide without feeling embarrassed whether they can have a can of Coke. There was a lot of it about awareness. So things like, obviously, we have to pay for things for our memberships via direct debit. But a lot of people don't have a bank account. especially when you're hand to mouth, you're not actually putting money in the bank account. You're getting paid in cash. The money goes straight out
Yes.
of your hand, and it never goes in a bank account. So you don't have a direct debit. So you get lots of people whose direct debits bounce every month. They'll come in, and they'll pay for their child's swim lesson in cash. But every single month, the direct debit will bounce, and they'll find the money and they'll pay for it. But instead of just thinking, God, this person's such a hassle and they're so unorganized, actually, there might actually be a very legitimate reason as to why it's always bouncing. And there's things like with most gym memberships, if you pay, and this was a thing that came up with other stuff, if you can pay for it all in one go, you get a discount. And if you pay for it,
lots of different things do that, don't they? Insurance and
if you can pay for it by direct debit, you get a discount. But if you need to pay for it as and when, it's much more expensive, which is a huge disadvantage to people who are impoverished. So, and the easiest one is the cheap shoe analogy.
The Commander Vimes analogy, yes.
If you could buy a shoe for £100 versus the one at £20 a year, you've got, and it lasts longer, you're better off. And it comes same with clothes. If you could buy a higher quality pair of clothes, you only have to go shopping for clothes once a year or once every couple of years, you are actually saving money, even though you've bought a more expensive item. And it's that constant compounding of you're being punished because you're
it's
poor.
a sort of socioeconomic unfairness, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it very much keeps people down, and it's
poverty premium.
Poverty that is indeed it. The poverty premium. I don't remember the term.
I've pulled up the book because, of course, I have all the Discworlds sat on the desk next to me, and I found the quote. It's in Men at Arms, and it is the reason that the rich were so rich. Vimes reasoned was because they managed to spend less money. Take Boots, for example. He earned $38 a month plus allowances. A really good pair of leather boots cost $50, but an affordable pair of boots, which were sort of okay for a season or two, and then leaked like hell when the cardboard gave out, cost around $10. These were the kinds of boots that Vimes always bought, and wore until the soles were so thin he could tell which part of Ankh-Morpork on a foggy night by the feel of the cobbles. The thing was that good boots lasted for years and years. A man who could afford $50 had a pair of boots that would still be keeping his feet dry in 10 years' time, while the poor man who could only afford cheap boots would have spent $100 on boots in the same time and would still have wet feet. So, yeah, that was Terry Pratchett's version of it. And that's, as soon as you started talking about that, that's what came to mind. And so I should now put this book carefully away because it's a little bit damaged. But no, it is fundamentally incredibly expensive to be poor.
I'm more impressed that you managed to find the exact quote in that amount of time in a book.
Yeah,
you knew what page number it was on.
Yeah, still listening and talking.
Me, right?
I know. But I still find it incredible the way your mind is just Rolodexes of pictures.
I just the otters are on form today, so.
Haha.
So have you had to do any special training or anything, Kim? Obviously, where you're working at the moment, you see lots of different people coming and going every single day. Is there anything specific you've been sort of asked to look out for, or?
Oh, I don't know at the moment. I mean, I'm massively behind on the training.
It's all E-Zone, isn't it?
Oh, it's better than E-Zone. It's better than E-Zone.
Oh my word.
Yeah. I mean, it's not hard, but yeah. They've done a lot of more health and safety and what else have they done? And food safety type stuff, But I do think they have got an equality training that I do need to get around to doing. I'm quite excited to see what that's like. But yeah, I think there's definitely we also have a lot of school kids in as well. So that's going to be, it's supposed to be in bank holiday recently, so I haven't really had many it's mostly been kind of more families and individuals and stuff. So it's going to be interesting to see, how everyone is different, the different groups. I think we definitely, I was quite surprised at the kind of diversity in the people that we get here. I was kind of imagining everyone to be kind of white and I guess maybe more leaning towards younger, but not necessarily because I go to hostels all over the place. So yeah, there's definitely sometimes a bit of a language barrier and things like that. And having to communicate then with people in different groups and stuff like that. Around here, we've kind of got, there's a bit of bits where you kind of have to walk on the road and stuff, and people aren't necessarily aware of that. So I think there's sort of things like that I think you kind of have to pick up on, and maybe they state it in the training. But yeah, I think it's just kind of thinking about how you communicate, and also like the various different needs that people have. I keep thinking every time I serve breakfast to someone, I'm waiting for someone to go, can you please not put baked beans next to my other food? Can I have them on a separate dish? Because that's what I think every single time I serve someone. I'm like, I wouldn't want my beans next to my eggs. I wouldn't want my beans next. I would be like, yes.
They all have to be on separate plates and carefully labelled. And
Yeah, one of my friends says that she has to have her beans separate, and she chooses when the beans her beans can touch everything, but it's her choosing when the beans get to touch.
Yeah. I think it's a bit about the temperature as well. Like, they go a bit colder before anything else, and I kind of don't want to I want to eat the beans last, but then I kind of feel like I need to eat them first if they're on the plate with everything else, because it's like, well, then they start spreading and they start touching more and more things, and it's just like, I don't know. Yeah. Contamination. Everything is contaminated with beans now. I mean, I used to hate
contamination.
Yeah, I used to hate beans. I had a real issue with beans and bananas, both these. Yeah, I had a real issue with beans and bananas, but I eat both now, so I don't know what happened, but yeah, beans have to be separate generally, or in a place where they're, I don't know, touching something that's okay. Bananas, I'm actually okay with bananas now, but I did once throw up in a playground because someone had banana on their face, and I was like, the smell and the texture of banana. I just like.
I mean, that's a quite an autistic thing, isn't it? Everyone I know, who's including myself, it's a texture and feeling thing, and there are one or two. Which I can't handle. Even thinking about them makes me cringe.
I don't know how the hell I got over it. How I went from being in a playground and throwing up because someone had a tiny amount of banana on their face to now eating bananas and really liking them. I don't know what happened.
I mean, I used to hate spinach. I forced myself to like it, so my mum would cook more of it because I knew my sister hated it. So
wow, that is cruel.
Well, she forced me to eat tomatoes, so.
Fair. I remember this is really going down a rabbit hole of things now, but yeah, I remember laughing at my brother because I don't know, for some reason my mum had to cut up my chips. I don't know why. But she cut up my chips once, and I was like, ha ha ha, I have more chips than you. And he was like, well, no, you don't. They're just cut in half. And I'm like, yeah, but there's more of them. It's just, I don't know why she had to cut them in half. Like was they too small that I could choke on a chip or something? I don't know. Oh dear.
So, hauling us back, I don't know, we're not really, because we haven't really gone that far off. One of the other things I was thinking about, because we're talking about training and so forth, and again, unfortunately, it's another children one. I did find a piece of research that's been done in Queensland in Australia, based on a game which has been out for quite some time now, called the Secret Agent Society. The strapline is Solving the Mystery of Social Encounters, which is basically it was a game that was built to try and teach children about understanding social rejection and building up on the sort of the weird secret rules and understanding emotional regulation, behaviours, anxieties, and so forth. And there were one or two things about the study which I think, Kim, you spotted when we were talking about this earlier on.
Yeah, just about the fact that I think in the end, well, I don't know what the ages were, but it was certainly very much weighted towards being with boys rather than girls. I think there was it 60 boys and 10 girls that they ended up looking at? Is that right? Have I got my...
Yes, I've just found that the thing, so 60 male and 10 female, which feels a little bit skewed somewhat, doesn't it? And it sort of feeds into that sort of overarching thing we have where women are massively under represented in ASD and ADHD diagnoses. So, but yeah, so I find it's quite interesting, actually. I mean, video games sort of teaching you things and so forth. I have to admit, I tend to use them more as to relax and sort of let my mind sort of focus on a particular thing. I mean, there's a game which I know Joey's played before, called Satisfactory, where you set up and build a factory, and its processes and it's sort of spreadsheets. But as a game, you think about inputs and outputs and so forth. And I play it quite nice and slowly. I like to think about things and slowly design them and build them up and all the rest of it. And I have friends who blitz through the game. And in the time I've sort of built one small factory, they've built half a world.
Who these friends are, can't possibly comment.
But I mean, I think a lot of people actually find sort of video games quite calming and a nice way to escape from the world. And do you play any, Kim?
I do, but I was also thinking at the time that there's a polar opposite of that, and that there's people that go and play ridiculous games that look really, really stressful. But that is not me. I don't play stressful games because I do try and use video games as a way to escape and actually relax and calm myself down. So I'm not one of those people going around shooting lots of things and being attacked because, yeah, it's just too stressful. But yeah, I play a few games. I'm very, I guess, retro now. I tend to play a lot of like point and click games and, you know, like adventure games where you have to go around and like find things and solve puzzles and stuff. So they're quite relaxing games, and quite, you know, they kind of use your brain a bit as well. So, you know, they're quite a fun thing to do until you can't get the puzzle right, obviously. But
well, I mean, yeah, but we have to get things right every time.
I know.
I know. Part of me was wondering if actually one of the key things about how actually video games can be a positive, especially if you're trying to teach about sort of social interaction, is that a lot of them do require teamwork and communication and building up a reliance on other people who you might not be able to see, but you can speak to. And it's in an environment and a place that you have a certain level of control over. Some of the shooty bang stick games I've not really played that much of, but I mean, Joe, Borderlands, for example, that requires teamwork, right?
It can do, very much so, and it is a game that does reward you for teamwork, and generally you're not playing with strangers. So, Borderlands is an example, one where it's a very funny game. So not only are you going around shooting, banging, doing little puzzles and whatnot as well, and getting to collect things, which is part of the appeal of Borderlands, is you go around finding loot and getting the better gun and the better bits and whatnot. But it's very funny, so it's a very enjoyable experience to play with other people. But I would imagine from a positive experience, especially if you have issues socially, I think things like I would imagine Call of Duty or even Halo, where it's not cooperative. You are in a team and you're having to deal with people who are incredibly toxic. If you make a mistake, I would imagine it is damaging for anyone, really.
Yes, it can be traumatic, can't it? Yeah.
I've let one of our mutual friends, Sean, we've played a bit of League of Legends, and we were just doing the tutorial with robots and a couple of people on our team. So there was no stakes. It wasn't a ranked game. There was no, the moment the game ended, nothing that would have mattered. But people were being so unpleasant to him because he was trying to learn the game. And you're like, but we're in the tutorial mode where you're supposed to be doing this, and yet people are still horrific. So I think very much depends on the game. I do like a chilled game, but I do also, I've played Frostpunk, which is a city building game set in Victorian times where you've got to keep a generator burning because the ice ages come early, but you're constantly desperate for resources, so it's incredibly stressful. It's so stressful because
I had to stop playing the game for a bit because I was getting so like, no, but the people are going to die. I have to do the thing. And it became actually like the opposite of being a way to recover spoons. It was costing me more to.
And it starts making you make very unpleasant decisions where you suddenly realise that you've somehow become Nazi Germany. You've got all these watchtowers and patrols going around, keeping civil unrest down. You're like, how did I get here? I was just concerned I was running out of wood, but now I'm executing people in the street for not obeying me. How have we got here?
Oh,
well,
God.
Because I hate to break it to you, but... Sorry, Kim, I interrupted. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was wondering what was coming after the but.
Tom Daly knitting patterns? I'm not sure. What are we talking about? Games. Yeah, so... what about, say, board games, though? Because board games can be require a lot of work together.
Oh yeah, I much prefer cooperative board games for sure. Definitely.
Yeah, I like a game, even a competitive board game, as long as it's been designed well so that it's fun for everyone
Oh yeah,
all the way through.
not
There's
like Monopoly.
Well, that's the thing. Monopoly is held up as this game that everyone should play, and it's the worst. And I know this because I've probably got 12 different versions of it, which I've recently had to cull down because I don't play it because it's a dreadful game.
It's almost like it
The
says
landlord's
that
game.
capitalism is bad. Shocking.
No, you mustn't say that. We live in a society.
Oh yeah, the podcast is pro-capitalism, definitely.
Yeah, we are absolutely a pro-capitalist podcast. Give me your money. No.
Pro-union, pro-capitalist,
I'm sure at some point we will end up covering Das Kapital, and no doubt we'll get some raving leftist on to tell us why we're all terrible. But until then, yeah, Monopoly is not a good game.
No,
Too many arguments.
There are similar games where you're having to, like Ticket to Ride is not a dissimilar game, but
I like Ticket to Ride.
I like Ticket to Ride
all the way through, and you don't necessarily know who's won until the last moment.
No.
And the same with this one called Ethnos, which is it's like Risk, but not as drawn out. But again, it's fun all the way through. And every time someone makes a really good move, they have to discard their hand that lets other people pick up what they didn't use. So just because someone's done something good doesn't mean you're disadvantaged. It's just games that are very good at keeping every player involved are the the S tier of games for me, and I love it when I can find something like that.
Yeah,
I with Ticket to Ride, I just get obsessed with making like the longest train, and I forget how I don't. I feel like when I play Ticket to Ride, I'm not actually ever playing to win. I'm just playing to get the longest train I could possibly get, and often I do win just because.
You've got the longest train.
I've got the longest train, and then I do try and get the routes at the same time, but I don't ever go into it trying to screw people over. I'm just there like I want to get my routes and I want to get my long train, and most of the time that actually allows me to win without screwing anyone over. It's going to be a while until I can play Pandemic again. I feel like
can't win. It doesn't matter what I do. I think I've won it one game of Pandemic. And every other time, I am wiped out.
I've won it a couple of times, but yeah, so you tend to not win it more often than you do win it. But again, I really like it because you have to synergize with each other. You have to understand what each other's role is and make use of each other's skills and abilities. And that does require you then to actually sort of have a connection with those people. And the ones where I've won, we've won, I should say, are ones where I've known the people quite well, we get along well. The ones we haven't, it's just a bunch of strangers. I'm not going to talk to you because I don't want to have to talk to like strangers. That's difficult and scary. I don't like strangers. Strangers are scary. But yeah, I do think that there is certainly benefit in, again, going back slightly to this secret agent society, this Australian trial. It is focused on children, it's parent supported and all the rest of it. But sort of the paper, I'll put a link to it in the episode stuff. It did actually show some pretty decent outcomes because of the way it's been designed. It helps sort of kids to get a better grasp of those social emotional skills and how they can interact with others by putting them into a position. We spoke in a previous episode, I think, when we were talking about empathy, how you can sort of pick up characteristics of a character you're playing in a game or reading in a book or watching on television. You can sort of, I certainly know I can quite easily put myself into those shoes by sort of imagining, right, what can this person be going through? And then trying to adopt some of that, I suppose, persona to make it easier to deal with a specific thing. We'll talk about this a lot more when we do masking, but it is a form of that, is that if you can learn ways of doing it in such a way that it becomes less stressful to you, it requires fewer spoons, you will adopt that as being a fairly standardized way of doing things. But that does require that the training program, if you will, is carefully written and supported. But principally, it does also require the person to have real life people around them, be that loving family or friends or whatever, to help, I suppose, practice that on, maybe.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at their website, and it looks like, from first glance, actually pretty decent. And it's nice that they've actually kind of, it's not just about autism. It's kind of like, autism, anxiety disorders, ADHD, in terms of the actual secret agent society. Like, there looks like there's a lot behind it. There's a lot of about unhelpful thoughts as well, and how to deal with those and things like that. So it looks like it goes into a lot of detail. Obviously, having not played it, I'm sure it could be criticized on lots of levels as well. But
well, you know what we have to do now. Time to download and play a game for children.
I wonder how much it costs. I'm like, quite curious. I'm kind of curious.
We can do a review.
Yeah.
It takes a long time to get to the price. Right.
Oh.
I was having a look at the so we were talking about the flight, the JetBlue.
Yes.
So they partner with an organisation called Autism Double Checked.
Oh, tell us about Autism Double Checked. Who are they? I know nothing about them.
So they. Let's see the About Us page. It was founded by Alan Day and his partners, who have more than 100 years of collective experience in the travel industry, who also have special needs children and understand firsthand what precautions are necessary to create a safe and enjoyable space for individuals with ASD while away from home. I don't know. I get weird vibes with their website, actually. There's quite a lot of things that actually are a bit of red flags for me. I get the impression it's a parent who doesn't have ASD, or says he doesn't, or isn't diagnosed with ASD, who has a kid with ASD, and it reads very much like a parent who has a kid with ASD.
Oh, I know. I've just opened their website and their logo.
Oh, yeah, it's the puzzle. Yeah.
Red flag.
Red flag. One red flag. And one of their blog posts is, autism is not a disability. Autism is a different ability.
Right, so from the mysterious voice, I can hear the ranting.
What else did I find? Yeah, there was a few blog posts that I was a bit like, ooh, hang on. And it's all about, there's so many things about autism, children with autism and stuff like that. There's hardly anything about adults with autism. It just seems to be all about, Alan's son has autism, and that's why he's so great at creating this stuff for people with autism. But yeah, there's so many puzzles pieces. But yeah, I think it's pretty got certain things which are decent, but yeah, some red flags there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those the basic Secret Service.
Yes.
Secret 33 euros. 33 euros 10.
I might even buy it and play it to see if it teaches me how to be better with dealing with people.
What's frustrating, obviously, it's always frustrating to the other perspective that this is needed. It's horrible that we're in a world where we've got to a point where we've had to have, because there's so many things when people talk about sport and what sport should be, it should be providing that sort of service. It should be allowing people to work out how to work together, and it should be accessible for everyone. And we've done such a bad job at getting people outside to play any form of game, regardless of whether it's football, badminton, or it's some form of capture the flag game or anything like that. That people are so disenfranchised by the idea of it that they've not been able to participate in what should also be providing a lot of the skills that this secret agent society. Not to say that you can't do both at all, because you should. Actually, reading it looks like it's actually really very good fun, and I'm all for fun things. But I find it very frustrating that because my experience of exercise and sport at school was very unpleasant because it was so competitive. If you had made one mistake, you were laughed at, and it's like, but we're not even playing against another school. This is just in the playground. We're going to go do some maths in a little bit. Why are you so upset about me not being able to stop a goal? But it's not what it's just, yeah. maybe that's a failing of the sports kids play at school, like the failing of Monopoly. Maybe if we invented better playground games.
Games that you don't necessarily win, or games that you can only win if you cooperate.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can have a game that you can win so long as it's still enjoyable for people when they lose. And teach kids that it's not. It's just about enjoying the ride, and not necessarily. Because I think teaching kids to lose is as important, because that's how you cope with failure.
I think that's the crucial thing you've just hit upon there. Is it's not so much about making sure that they lose, because I think everyone does need to. It's about teaching them how to learn from that, grow from it, build from that.
Yeah, and I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head in terms of it's great that the game exists and it definitely does a lot of stuff, but it also is it feels a bit of a kind of lazy way out, in that teachers just go, oh, here, sit and play this game, that'll teach you how to do stuff, and it's like, well, actually, I don't know. I feel like a lot of this stuff is really useful stuff for everyone, even if they haven't been diagnosed with autism or anxiety or ADHD or whatever, and they could probably just be talking about a lot of this stuff and adapting a lot of this stuff. I mean, it's a good engaging way of getting people probably doing things in a different way. It's just, But
I think this sort of secret agent society thing might become, well, it's certainly going to get a bit more, I think, publicity and news coverage coming sooner and sooner, because we've obviously, I've got a couple of neighbours that are teachers, primary school teachers, and they've got people coming out of reception now who are COVID babies.
So they didn't really have that experience.
They didn't age, 2 to 3, if not only 4, didn't have interaction with anyone besides their parents. And the teachers are saying very clearly, you can see the children that have been sat in front of an iPad and the children that have been playing with their parents the entire time. And even the way they talk is like a cartoon character, because that's the interaction they've had. So it's going. I think there's going to have to be a lot of lessons learned, and hopefully very quickly, so that they can be implemented to try and give people try and get back some of that development they've lost, because obviously it's a very time sensitive.
Issue. Slightly random point, but I found this really fascinating the other day. Someone told me that apparently twins take a lot longer to develop their communication, a year longer or something, because of the fact that apparently they develop a kind of communication between themselves, and it sounds a little bit like The Sims, in that they have this weird language that no one else gets, but they understand each other. So they just kind of develop this thing between them. But it means that then they don't then start developing, the actual language that everyone else knows, because they're just like, well, why would I need to? Because I can completely interact with this little, this kid that's the same age as me, or baby that's the same age as me. So why do I need to learn this other language? So apparently they take a little bit longer than non-twins, which I thought was fascinating.
Yeah, so my best friend's son has never quite diagnosed language disorder, but what's essentially in his head cannot come out of his mouth. And it takes him a long time to formulate a sentence. And if he's got time to think about it, or if you're talking with him via text, it's night and day, the difference in the communication. But when he was little, you could have a full-blown conversation with him in gobbledygook, know exactly what he meant. You knew that he wanted the jam, and he wanted it spreaded on the toast, but it wasn't English that he was speaking, but it was an entirely different way of communicating. With made-up words. And I could very, very much see that if it's easier for the twins to communicate with each other that way as well, how you would develop that. Because ultimately, language is made up. It's just we've all agreed to use the same made-up words.
Everything's made up.
Everything's made up. We just all agreed to use the same made-up rubbish.
Yeah, it's all a social construct, everything, even language.
This is all a simulation happening inside Simon's head.
Kim's now terrified that she's imaginary.
Don't delete me.
I'm like, which otter am I now? Am I an otter?
Do you want to be an otter?
I don't know. Do I? Do you treat your otters well?
I treat them all well. They've got an HR representative in the union and everything.
Oh.
Jerry's gone very quiet now because he knows he will be deleted. Should we go back to safer ground? So, dragon dicks.
They are pointy, apparently.
Oh dear.
Can we get back to like something safe, like what celebrities knit or something? Judi
Yeah.
Dench, what does she do? Does she do anything? She's like a national treasure. She must make things.
Judi Dench. Judi Dench is a dungeon master for her grandchildren, apparently, in Dungeons and Dragons.
Is she?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. She apparently really likes doing that. She got into it. I want to say during lockdown, but I think it was a pre-lockdown thing. And so yeah, she occasionally she's a DM for she just loves obviously doing the voices and the narrating and everything else, and she does that for her grandkids.
Well, that's fascinating because she's dyslexic, isn't she? And I remember many years ago when I was diagnosed with dyslexia, so like looking at all the famous people who've got it and trying to understand how, especially actors, because I can never remember what it is I want to say even when I want to say it, let alone learning lines. But it does make you more creative as well. We talked about this last week, didn't we, Joey, about the creativity aspect of it. So I suppose, yeah, her being a DM and being an actor, that kind of goes well together, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it would be amazing. There's a lot. There was a lot of very famous people, very cool people that do like Dungeons and Dragons, like Henry Cavill. Henry Cavill, who's Superman, is the huge nerd. Huge.
I've just found a website which is like 10 celebrities that you didn't realise were huge D&D nerds.
Tell us all about the huge D&D nerds.
There's a whole thing about how apparently Judi Dench was taught by Vin Diesel, but apparently that's not actually true. There's Joe how do you say his name?
Joe Manganiello?
That's the one. Manganiello. Yeah, that's a lot easier to say when you don't try and break it into 3 words that doesn't actually pronounce that. I was like, break it down, Kim, break it down. Oh no, that made it worse. Oh, apparently Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, Dwayne The Rock Johnson. But yeah, at number 7.
Sorry, so Matt Damon, as in like in between being his name, is busy, D&Ding.
Yeah. Yeah, apparently. Yeah, but at number 7 is Elon Musk, apparently.
That doesn't surprise me.
Cool. We don't talk about emerald miners on this podcast.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Yes, Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Oh.
Yeah, let's go to someone that's like a lot nicer. What's he off that I'm thinking of him?
Got Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Yeah.
He was in Inception. He was in Third Rock from the Sun.
I was going to say Third Rock, yeah.
When he was little. One of my first crushes was Steve.
He's just got a really nice smile, hasn't he?
He's got a lovely smile and quite a nice bottom as well. I'm not going to lie.
Do you follow him on Instagram by chance?
Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I don't actually. Why don't I follow Joseph Gordon-Levitt on? I do now.
He was in Looper. I remember that was quite good.
Looper, Inception.
Oh God, but he was horrible in 500 Days of Summer because that's just it's a great film, but yeah.
He was in Mysterious Skin as well, which is a very
I didn't realise that.
Incredibly disturbing film because that's about.
Yes, of course he was. Yes,
that's about paedophilia. So it's a very, very, very horrific, beautiful film, but also the darkest film I've probably ever watched.
Yes, I do recall it involved like alien abductions and prostitution and other strange things.
What was this film? Oh my God, he was in Don John. Oh
yes,
no.
Yeah.
He's played some weird roles. Oh God. My housemate, she had a guy had a crush on her, and he was like, oh, I'm like that guy in Don John, like, and you're the woman in Don John. And have either of you seen Don John?
No, I want to.
No,
but he's sort of self-obsessed. He's obsessed with porn and sort of thing, isn't he?
Yeah, and that's the thing. So the whole premise is that basically he watches a lot of porn, and then he's trying to find happiness and intimacy with his potential true love, and yeah, he has unrealistic expectations from watching porn, and so it was just really weird that this person said this. That, oh yeah, I'm like the guy in Don John, and you're like the woman, because it's like that's quite a weird comparison to make and to kind of like say about yourself. So
there you go. So, well, yes, fine, good. So, is there anything else we want to talk about?
The only thing I've seen is that one with the all the pictures of the Queen, and who's the Queen? Who's the little boy in the pictures with the ears over his
That
hands?
is Prince Louis. That's William's youngest.
His hands over his ears, not his ears over his hands.
Oh yes, screaming because the noise became too much for him.
Yeah, and loads of people were going on about him being autistic, right? Even though, I don't know, like it could
Small
just be the
child,
fact.
massive fighter jet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, that is the one. If that was the only diagnosis required, then it'd be nice and easy, wouldn't it? But unfortunately,
yeah.
He's 4 years old. I think people can just be allowed to be upset by loud noises.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But yeah, otherwise, I don't have anything.
I think they're quite interesting. Is there anything else that we think we should talk about?
Well, I think possibly your perspective, Simon, of a weekend away where we've just run a camp for 500 people might be interesting, especially considering you were so heavily involved in running it. So it's not like you could hide in a corner and not be involved. You did have to obviously work through any possible things that came up. So it'd be very interesting to, I think, hear about your perspective on that.
Yes. Okay. Fine. So, we both belong to an outdoor group, and every year they do this sort of big spring camp thing. They take over a rugby club in North Wales and put on dozens of events and so forth. And yes, as Jess says, there's 500 or so people there, and I think certainly my sort of social anxiety with just that number of people. I for years and years and years, having been a member of this group since 2009, I put off going to it until 2018 because it was just like, no, too many people, can't deal with it. And so when I went as a volunteer, because if I put on a different color T-shirt and I wear a name tag, then I'm not actually there. I'm not Simon there. I'm Simon doing a job there. And so you can sort of put myself into a different headspace and work with it and deal with it, and it's not a problem at all. I mean, obviously, I'm incredibly lucky that I had my best friend there. I had a whole bunch of people that I sort of get along with really well and I love, and so I was able to sort of recover when I needed to, and sort of just enjoy a nice glass of wine or a barbecue dinner and just sort of recover some spoons. I think it was such a really wonderful thing because it brings together a whole bunch of people. I spoke to people over the weekend for whom it was their first queer event to go to. There was a very nice person there from South Wales who said to I think both of us actually that they felt so excited to be there. They were able to be their authentic selves and not worry about who they were. And a really lovely thing, which, and I'm going to embarrass him now, which Joey did, was put up a whole bunch of different flags all around the site. So put up like trans pride and asexual and the progress flag and lesbian pride and a whole bunch of them around with little pieces of paper next to them to sort of explain the history behind them, why they are meaningful. And I think that was a really lovely thing. And certainly I got comments from people saying, oh, this is great. Can you please pass along our thanks to whoever put this together? In terms of how I found the event, yeah, like I say, when I'm on these sort of things, if I'm doing something, then I'm fine. For the same reason that I like running a lot of these events because I do get a lot of personal enjoyment out of seeing other people enjoy what's there. I absolutely love walking in the mountains and camping and so forth. It is for me a fundamental part of who I am, and being able to introduce other people to it and let them experience that is absolutely wonderful to my core. It's just 500 people. Just oh no! I mean, it's. Can you imagine having to deal with that many people, Kim? It's just
yeah, that's a lot of people.
Yes. And just because I know he will listen to this, I think we do need to give a shout out to James for being an absolute super. I mean, I put a lot of work into that weekend. Everyone did, but James just went above and beyond, didn't he?
He certainly did. I mean, I think I saw him have 1 hour off a day, pretty much, and he was there for. What, 5 days, 6 days, almost.
Yeah.
So, yeah, He worked his little socks off.
Exactly, and you know, not necessarily for atypical reasons, but because trying to deliver these things and ensure that everyone has a great time is part and parcel of doing that sort of altruistic thing. And you know, I think it was really lovely.
I can't remember if it was you or it was James that said it to me. You might have both said it to me. Is that while you're doing something, you can't wear a mask, or you can't. Yes. You're not aware that you're wearing a mask or having to put one on because you are so busy just making sure the task in front of you is complete and done well that you can't be worrying about something else.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, we'll talk about this in depth when we do the masking episode, but that's effectively what it is. It is an easy to wear mask because you're focused on doing things through that persona, through that method of doing things. You know, it's when you're wearing it, it's much easier to smile at people and be patient with them and help and all the rest of it. I mean, I like to think that I'm all those things generally anyway, but it becomes easier because I am there as Simon the volunteer, not Simon. And it makes it a little bit easier for me to, I suppose, to disassociate the social anxiety thing of it all and just go along with it. So I don't know if that applies for everyone who was there. I know there are some people who are just there doing it because it's the right thing to do or because they were asked to. I was there and doing it because if I wasn't doing those things, I wouldn't go to that event because it'd just be overwhelming for me.
This is one of the things that when I'm teaching balance, that I talk about when you're standing on one leg with one leg in the air and doing any sort of pose that requires you to be off balance, you can't think about anything else. So the only thing you can be thinking about is what you're currently doing. You can't worry about a gas bill or what everyone else is doing or anything. Nothing else exists apart from the task you're doing, which is I always think is a really lovely thing because it allows the rest of the world to sort of dissolve. And you've got that one task that it really does require your entire effort to be able to do some of the poses, even if you're not good at them. And even if you're very good at them, which I like to think I'm relatively okay, it still requires I can't be worried about what I'm doing the rest of the day because it's that singular focus task, which is actually very calming, even though you're doing something that's quite difficult.
Kim, any thoughts?
No, yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think I was thinking in terms of, I think probably in the job that I'm doing now, a lot of the time when I'm doing, it is a lot of customer service and interaction with people. And I think you do end up putting on a bit of a mask of like, I'm serving you, I'm doing this job. And it is definitely easier to do that than, because you're performing that kind of role. And I was thinking it in relation to almost the pets as well, is that, like when you can kind of that bridge between the pets and animals and the owner, I think it's easier to bridge because, I don't know, people go a bit silly around animals and it's more like acceptable to do that. You can kind of like just let your guard down a little bit. Whereas I think it's a lot harder with someone that you don't know to just, you can't go up to them and start stroking their belly. Like that would be weird, but you can go up to a dog and start speaking in a weird voice and like just letting your guard down a little bit more than you can with someone that you don't know. So there's a few, I don't know. There's a lot of things that I think we can definitely delve into it in a masking episode for sure.
Well, I think we'll call into it there because we've been recording for some time and I need to try and edit this today because I'm off to Vienna tomorrow for the rest of the week.
Oh.
La-di-da.
I know. I'm off on a lovely junket. I mean, I'm off to speak at conferences and things about the European Year of the Rail and European Year of Youth. So I'm off to talk about apprenticeships in the rail sector.
Ooh.
Wow, you're like travelling all over the place at the moment.
Well, I mean, this is my first foreign trip since the COVID. So. It's like I got a little moment earlier on when I was doing the book, the checking in thing. And no doubt when I pack later, I will end up like packing, then unpacking, then repacking, and then like panicking if I've got everything and how many FP2 masks do I need, and it'll be a whole autistic ADHD meltdown thing, and then I'll go to bed and I'll wake up tomorrow and I'll be happy. So yes, I'm going to try and edit this up tonight. Anyway, so no, thank you both very much as always. It's been an absolute pleasure as ever to chinwag with you, and thank you to you, the listener. We'll call into it there. Thank you again. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.